Hello, 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 everyone. It's Dr. Tamara Beckford, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Alrighty, so today it's all about these authors in this wonderful book. This is White Coats, Courageous Hearts, True Stories of Doctors Reclaiming Their Humanity in a System That Challenges It. Okay, so I'm very excited about this launch party that we're having. If you look on the screen, you'll see all the doctors here and everyone who's involved in this wonderful book. Alrighty, so this book is not just about having courageous hearts, but a lot of us have poured out some of our deepest, most vulnerable moments. And we're here to tell you all about it and to tell you why this chapter means so much. All of our chapters mean so much to us. Before we dive into it, I'm going to bring to the stage the person who is the mind, beautiful mind behind this wonderful, wonderful book. And she also has a lovely chapter in it. This is Miss Kim Downey. Hello, Kim. How are you?
I'm good,
Let me give you a
Tamara.
round of applause.
Thank you
All
so
righty,
much.
Kim. Thank you so much for putting together this wonderful book and this idea. So let me know what made you decide that, this project was so important for you to put together to highlight what was going on in healthcare because you yourself, you're not a physician, but you are in healthcare. So tell us why it was so important for you to do this.
Sure. So, very briefly, I'm a physical therapist by training. And for those of you who don't know me yet, I had cancer 3 times recently, all since the pandemic. And one of my doctors took his own life, and I was devastated. And I felt a calling to support doctors. So, that's what I've been doing. And as part of that, I did start a YouTube channel. And all of you were guests on my YouTube channel. And my physician coach, Dr. Michael Hirsch, and I had a chat about perhaps compiling a book of physician stories. And then Emmy, who is here and we'll hear from, is an editor, and she approached me about doing that. And that's how it got started. And there wouldn't be a book if it wasn't for every single one of the 15 of you who have chapters in this book saying yes to being on my podcast and yes to being in my book. So you're in my heart. And I like to say a patient reached out to a doctor and they helped each other heal. That was the title of our article with Dr. Tony Avellino and I. And we also said that sometimes beautiful things can rise from the ashes of the saddest of things. And that's what's happening here. And every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. And everyone wins when physicians are well. And the last thing I'd like to say is that this book's dedication reads in loving memory of Dr. Stevens Ferlaza, my irreplaceable radiologist. You will always have a special place in my heart. And along with all of you, I want to thank my own doctors and every one of you out there saving lives every day. You're greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. The real interest that comes from this is recognizing that in medicine, we have so many voices, right? But there's so many opinions and critiques that happen. But sometimes it's not very positive critiques. And then us who are working in the space, sometimes that constant negative critique, it bounds and it fills up, and it can really bring us down. So there's a time that we can feel in so much pain. But I love that this book is put into three parts. And the first part is From Pain to Purpose. Now, I'm going to bring on one of our authors, Dr. Todd Odin. Where's Dr. Todd? There you are. So tell us about your chapter and tell us why you feel that even from this trauma that you've talked about in your chapter, connection is so important for us to pull ourselves together, even when we're dealing with traumatic incidents. Tell us about that traumatic incident, that emotionally traumatic incident that happened in your chapter, and how you were able to use connection to help you through.
For sure. Thanks for having me here and being a part of this project. It's super exciting. I think back in my career how we were trained in terms of compartmentalization and stuffing things in a box, and that's not what we should be doing. And actually, it was alluded to earlier in the conversation before I got on the show. One of the my trauma responses was actually how I ended up here. I had some administrators come in and have a great idea to move me back to the town where I got burned out, and I happened to be carrying this coffee cup in. And I literally resigned the next morning. And so, whether it's pain to purpose or purpose to the pain, that drove me to network. And that's how I met Kim. And we had an amazing conversation, probably about 2 years ago to the day. And I distinctly remember saying, Kim said, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure. And I said, Kim, you're amazing. Your smile's infectious. Just go for it. Just go for it. And here we are today. It's so incredible to see her progress and the work that she does. But ultimately, I think we all need to take a step back and realize the trauma that we've experienced in our life can be a beautiful thing if you embrace it and dig into it and move forward. And part of the healing from trauma is community. And the community that's been developed here with Kim, the community with Medicine Forward, as well as all these other amazing organizations around the country, I think presents an opportunity to really move the needle in our healthcare landscape. So I'm excited to be here. I hope everyone can get a copy of the book and maybe get a signature from Kim. And oh, by the way, there's a documentary coming out that's along these lines as well. So stay tuned.
Yes, thank you so much. So here's the book, White Coats, Courageous Hearts. It is available now on Amazon. So go ahead and get a copy of that. Thank you so much, Dr. Oden. So now we're going to go to our next author within this first part of the series, From Pain to Purpose. This is Dr. Sue McClellan Tolbert. Now, tell us, in your section, you talked about in medicine, we're often taught to fix, but you tapped into a portion that's actually helping so many of us in medicine right now and in healthcare overall, which is coaching. And you said one of the things about coaching is that you learn to move from fixing to serving. Tell us, Dr. Sue, all about your chapter and what brought that on, please. Uh-oh, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Tamara. And Kim, it's delightful to be here, seeing this whole project come to fruition. My chapter was titled The One Doctor's Story of Health and Well-Being. And I really wanted to focus not only on my story with some health challenges, but how we can kind of rise above or choose to rise above any of the challenges we face in life. And I think when I started to delve into coaching in 2017, personally, it became apparent to me that there was so much available, like Todd mentioned, with that connection piece, and also offering myself up kind of as a thought partner, as a coach to my colleagues, really helped me expand not only my understanding of the challenges we're facing in the workplace, but also the options we have at our fingertips to promote well-being. And I really reflect back to the beginning of medical training, where it became apparent to me that we were given pretty narrow guideposts to function within around fixing things. So patients coming in with disease, pathology, we faced a lot of death and dying. How do we fix things to make them better? And that becomes a really ingrained habit, sometimes to the detriment of even taking care of ourselves. We put the patients first. And certainly, I don't deny that they need a place at the front of the line. However, personally, we have to be in a healthy enough space in order to be able to serve them well. And so when I kind of transitioned in my brain from fixing to serving well, I felt like I had an easier job. I could just align alongside the patient and escort them on their health journey. However, there came a point where I realized I wasn't practicing what I was preaching and needed to really step back from my medical practice and focus on my own well-being in a way that really honored my values and my purpose. And so that's kind of the journey that I outline, and just encourage people to think about their thinking, explore your habits, dive into your kind of your unconscious behaviors. That's a lot of what coaching is about. How to grow in self-awareness, how to grow in self-management, in determination, in purpose. And so this book is really kind of a broad look at all of a whole bunch of different aspects around well-being and overcoming things that are challenging, rising above, rising out of the ashes, as we talked about earlier. And it's been a delight to participate. So I just encourage everyone to also grab a copy to read. There's some wonderful stories, commentaries, reflections, insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sue. You know, you've talked about like us really not just like looking at the surface, but really diving in within, which is one of the areas where we will find healing. Now, the thing about our lives is that we all feel like every one of us are unique, which we kind of are, but there are also the shared portion that happens, right? Where we share certain values, we share certain experiences, and it's important for us to realize, although we are unique, we do share a lot together, especially with challenges. And that's the second part of this book, which is called Unique Roles, Shared Challenges. I'm going to bring up Dr. Amna Shabir, who is going to talk about the challenges that happens with early career physicians, right? So she's going to tell us that about in her book, in her chapter. But I also want to ask you, Dr. Shabir, what would you say to a seasoned physician, like, no one who's no longer in the early careers? How would you say that we should gear our attitudes and our words towards some of the early career physicians? And then the early career physicians, what should they think about and say to themselves about the phase that they're going through? Please let us know.
Thank you, Dr. Beckford. I'm so excited to be here today with everyone and celebrating this tremendous effort. I think the first thing that's really important to know is when we talk about early career physician well-being or seasoned clinician well-being is that we're all on the same side of the exam table. We're all in this together. It's not an us versus them. And so when we realize that we have shared goals, shared experiences, then we can create something beautiful. Then we can build bridges. What I would say to my seasoned clinician colleagues is to model humanity, not perfection. Your vulnerability is more powerful than your CV. Share the struggles that you faced and just model being a human. You need rest, you need breaks. Go back and think of a time where you were that early career clinician that's present around you. Do you remember what it felt like when you had daycare drop-offs, kids' school challenges, you were trying to find your first home, you were trying to settle in a new area, new state, new country? How was that like? So model humanity and reflect on your own humanity would be number one. The second thing I would say is be the mentor you wish you had. So instead of just focusing on outcomes, being very, again, us versus them mentality, what did you wish that you had when you were in your early career years? So show up in that manner. And lastly, again, a 360 evaluation of looking at the culture that we're perpetuating. The culture it's very easy to say back in our days, this is what used to happen. But what about if we reached and approached any situation with the mentality that we're all suffering together? That's the same side of the exam table. And how can we create bridges and make the healthcare system better together? So instead of that divide, try to find that bridge. To my early career clinician colleagues, I would say that you need to completely step back and, first of all, believe yourself is what I would say. Just because you're earlier in your career doesn't mean that you're immune to burnout, does not mean that you're immune to moral injury, doesn't mean that all these other things that you're experiencing you are immune to because you think that, oh, I just got started. I have more gas in the tank right now. I just need to keep going. So believe yourself. Don't gaslight yourself when you feel awful, when you feel like you're tired, exhausted, you need rest. Because I really did not believe myself. And what that led me to do was take on more roles and more responsibilities that were not fulfilling. So that's number one. Number two is really strategize. Just pause and think what got you here won't get you there, as the famous quote goes. So the habits and the roles and thoughts that you've trained yourself to believe in, and the amazing work ethic that you have, or all these other things, they're not going to be the same at every point. So what you did in medical training will not serve you as an early career attending, because your life is filled with rapid transitions. And I go into more detail about that in the book chapter. So this is a point of reflection. Strategize. You need to step away and strategize in better ways. And the last thing I would say is, don't wait for burnout, a horrible life event, or till you feel completely depleted to ask for help. Help is not a last resort. Help should be asked often, frequently, all the time, from using an app to deliver your groceries, to talking to a friend, a mentor, a coach, a therapist, your primary care physician, whatever that looks like. So don't wait to ask for help. Ask for help often and frequently. And I invite you to go and get this awesome book and read the whole chapter, as well as all these other amazing chapters that we've talked about.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. Great advice. Great advice. Now, when you mention that, ask for help, ask for it often, remember as an early career physician that you should trust yourself. And it's really you trust in yourself that you belong within this community. Because sometimes early career physicians, sometimes, you'll get into this mind like, oh my God, I made it through. And then this imposter syndrome comes in. But we're all here together, right? And you belong. Now, there are different careers and within medicine, and some people are at the bedside, and then some people are not. But we all play a great role. Now, our next doc, Dr. Alae Kawam, I have a quick question for you. You are considered the people's pathologist. One of the things that you mentioned, you said that most of us spend our days surrounded not by people who love us or care about us, but by coworkers trying to survive the same grind, which I think is a very powerful statement in the chapter. Now, when we think about that, like, help us to dive into your chapter, which really highlights not only how you as a pathologist feel the connection, but how you feel like us in medicine at the different phases and the different portions of medicine, connecting and being connected together is a way for us to really move forward, because we're all trying to survive it, like Dr. Amna said, together. So tell us a little bit about your chapter and why you even wrote that statement in that chapter.
So thank you so much. I am so excited to be part of this project. I'm so happy to see everyone here. It's so nice to see some, the familiar faces. So very grateful for this opportunity. Being the people's pathologist, that's kind of like a passion of mine, where I can basically bridge the outside world, which is the patient and the clinician, with the laboratory. Now, nobody really knows what the laboratory does. A lot of medical decisions are based on lab results, but people just see numbers on a paper and they assume that this, just popped out of a machine. The reality is, or a biopsy result for that matter. The reality is that there is an actual human being like me, a pathologist, who's behind the scenes making these diagnoses, or QCing lab results, or whatever the case is. The idea is that we do a lot of work that is unseen. So for us, we kind of are disconnected. And I think one thing that I highlight in the chapter is about how, when it comes to wellness, we do focus a lot on our clinical colleagues, which they do need the help. But as someone who's always detached from the outside world, it was time for, a pathologist to kind of join that group and have a voice for other, people in the laboratory, not just pathologists, but the laboratory techs, the histotechs, basically the people running the instruments in the laboratory. So for me, it's not just about the patients, which are obviously the people that we serve, at the end, but there are, there's a whole other team in the background that's doing a lot of effort, and they need to be taken care of as well. So I feel like I'm not just for the patient, but I'm for the people, whether it's the histotechs, the clinicians, even sometimes clinicians come, ask us questions like, oh, can you explain this? Can you do this? Can you clarify this? So our role isn't just, diagnostics and sending out results, but really is to kind of bring, medicine together in the sense of like, how do we interpret things and make sense of what we know from the pathology side? There's a couple things that I delve into in the chapter. First and foremost, I think one of the biggest themes that a lot of us have touched upon is connection, whether that's connection with other people or connection with ourselves. So when we think of connection, Todd was saying how it's a healing force, and I totally agree with that. And I talk about that in the chapter. How we can kind of connect with other people, whether that's connecting with a patient as a pathologist, or whether that's connecting with a clinical colleague, or connecting with your coworkers. Um, just sharing that vulnerability, like Amna was saying, is a huge piece of this like healing process slash, I wouldn't even call it healing yet, but maintenance. It's just natural functions. So for someone who is disconnected in a certain sense, because I'm so distant and I just function in the laboratory, to be able to reconnect with everybody on some type of level is extremely meaningful. So another major theme that I think is being a part of what I call, or what's been, known as servant leadership. So what that means is to really, serve people as opposed to just have a vision and expect people to follow that vision. And I don't just want to stop here within the laboratory. I want people to think of servant leadership for healthcare at large. So healthcare systems, how can administrators and people who run the show on top really serve the people who are serving the patients? I advocate for that in the chapter, and it really comes down to rethinking our values, not just in terms of how can we squeeze the doctor and try to make a lot of money off of their work, but how can we support them and make them grow? And I think that's a really big theme. We talk about burnout. This is definitely one element of burnout, where we're basically exhausting people and overworking them. So it's not just about connecting and leadership. Another thing that I talk about is how we rethink healthcare at large, and how can we integrate new technology, things like AI, to make our lives simpler and better, to offload certain burdensome tasks onto things like machines and AI and things like that can actually help us and streamline our workflow. It's about being smart, not just working hard, and I think that's what the future is for. So for me, this kind of chapter has helped me grow. I am an early career pathologist. So for me, it's establishing who I am and what I want to be in the field without being, grounded, pounded to a pulse. So for me, this is a really good opportunity. I'm really happy to share this. I highly recommend everybody to get the book. Even if you're not a physician, I think that you should read the book, because I think there's a lot to learn for life in general.
Thank you so much. Well said. Well said. You're mentioning that you see where the future of medicine, the connection is so important. It's like you said, not only just for us as physicians, but integrating some of the technology, and even for those who are not physicians to get the book so that they can see what's going on. So what we're really thinking about is the future, right? So reimagining medicine, which is where our next section goes. So part 3 of this wonderful book is about the future and us as physician reimagining. So we're helping you with some tools, and we're helping you with some of the thought processes of physicians who've been there. And we're going to have our Dr. Robert Kornfeld. He's going to tell us about it. So now here's the thing about Dr. Kornfeld. He was able to take back control, right? He took control of his life. He took control of his practice, and he did this holistically. And he's going to really tell us how the holistic care, he's been able to do that, and doing the direct specialty care, he's been able to pull back and, as you said, reimagine medicine and bring it back. So go ahead, Dr. Kornfeld, tell us how you did that.
Well, thank you, Tamara. And also, Kim, thank you for involving me in this amazing project. I'm really glad and honored to be a part of it. So my story starts with burnout. And of course, I eventually went into a functional medicine direct pay practice. I'm an old dog. I've been at this a long time. And when I got into practice in 1982 after my residency, I literally had zero, and I mean zero, business training. I opened up an office and I started advertising. And before I knew it, people were flocking into my office. And I was trying to navigate what was happening between what I knew as a podiatrist, what I knew as a podiatric surgeon, and what I was trying to figure out in running my practice. And couple that with some of the lifelong issues I hadn't dealt with, I started to become rather overwhelmed. But because I was trained to think that I knew it all and I had all the answers, I just kept plodding along on the path that I was on. At a certain point, not knowing any better, I was up to 50, sometimes more patients per day as a solo practitioner. And little by little, I started to develop symptoms. And I'm going back to the 1980s. I was having anxiety. My heart was pounding. I was having chronic headaches. I couldn't sleep. I had GI problems. I was getting rashes all over my face. At one point, I thought I had MS. I started going to doctors. And the only thing I was getting were prescriptions. Here's an anxiety pill. Here's a digestive pill. Here's one for your pain. And I was getting side effects and I was not improving. Things were just not progressing for me. So one of my friends said, you really should go to a holistic doctor. And I said, I'm not going to a quack with what's happening to me. Little did I know, I finally allowed myself to get another opinion with a holistic internal medicine doc. And he started asking me questions that no one asked me. He started looking into areas of my physiology that weren't even put on the table at all. And I remember the first thing he said to me was, I want you to go home and journal your diet for me. I didn't see the connection. But I went home, I journaled, I went back to him, and he said to me, you know, let's talk just about what's happening to your nervous system. He says, I see here you're eating tons of refined sugar. I said, yeah, well, I'm so busy, I don't have time to eat meals. I'm grabbing candy bars and I'm eating cookies and whatever I was eating. He said, well, you know, sugar mimics cortisol. You know, what you're doing is you're telling your brain you're in danger and it's trying to protect you more with stress hormones. He says, you got to get rid of that. And he did some lab work. And the long story short, after suffering for 3 years, and I mean really suffering, I was better in 3 months. The only thing I had to work on was what was going on up here. But I said to myself, I have to learn more about this. What they taught me was not enough. There's so much more to helping people and healing people. So I dove in and I started taking course after course and seminars and joining organizations and surrounding myself with doctors that were working through the holistic medical model. And the more I learned and the more I started applying it into my practice, the more excited I got. And it was going beautifully until the point at which insurance companies started to question what I was doing and told me that nothing I did was covered and they weren't going to pay. So now I had to figure out, how am I going to implement this without insurance coverage? So I started recommending it to patients as an option and explained to them that if they did this, it would be an out-of-pocket expense. And I started adding blocks of time in my schedule devoted just to those patients. So I started with a half a day, then a full day. Then when I got up to 2 days, it seemed like things were going really well. And then along comes this new offer called managed care. Didn't exist when I went into practice. But I thought, well, this would really work for me because it would be so much easier. I won't have to advertise the practice. I won't have to, do the things that I was doing to keep the practice lively and vital, because I was doing a lot of advertising for this functional medicine piece. And little by little, I think I joined up all the insurance companies around 1992. By 1999, I started to notice I was getting these symptoms again. Well, I was fighting with insurance companies. I was back to 55, 60 patients a day. I had to hire more staff. I had to move into a bigger office. My expenses started going through the roof. And I said to myself, I'm so out of control here. I'm so at the mercy of these insurance companies. This is not what I want. And it was at that moment that I said to myself, I'm going to do this on my own without insurance companies. And if it doesn't work for me, I'll go back to my music career, which is what I was doing before I went to podiatry school. But it worked. And it worked beautifully, because what I learned in getting away from all of this insanity was two things. Number one, when you're face to face with a patient and you're not having to see another one in 10 minutes, you can dive much deeper into what you're doing. And my diagnostic skills became extraordinary. And figuring out what was wrong with all of these patients that were coming to me with chronic foot and ankle pain that no one else could help was extraordinarily exciting to me, because I was helping people that no one else could help. But the other thing that I was aware of was I took control. I stopped allowing others to dictate my reality. I made it on my own terms. Was it hard? Absolutely. But when I signed on to all the managed care plans, I was taking the easy way out. And the thing that I learned most important out of all of the things that I've been through is that the easy way leads to permanent hardship. If you put in the hard work and do what is required of you to make something happen on your terms, you set yourself up for a much easier experience. And it led me into dealing with my own stuff, working on my own psychology, my own emotional health, my own physical health. And I became the biggest advocate for myself, because one thing I learned is if you don't do something about where you're at, especially if it's not satisfying and you're not happy, it's not going to change. No one's going to come and save you. And I see now, I'm in direct specialty care 25 years. It's much worse than when I left. Doctors are suffering. I had burnout back then, but no one called it burnout because no one knew what it was. They all thought that I was crazy. They kept telling me it was in my head. It's not in our heads. It's in the system. We're being exploited. We're being abused. And it's time to stop cooperating with those systems and those corporate greed mongers that are trying to hurt us and abuse us for their own gain. So I think one of the things that I want people to understand and come away from my chapter with is that we all have so much power. We possess the ability to create whatever we want. And I teach a course in which I kind of borrowed Einstein's theory of relativity, E=mc², except I say execution equals motivation times consistency squared. You can be motivated, but if you're not incredibly consistent, you can't move the needle. Nothing changes. You have to make a commitment. And honestly, I see nothing better right now than moving into a direct care, direct specialty care type of practice, because we have to disempower the insurance companies. We have to grab that standard of care and put it back in the hands of people that were properly trained to apply it to patient care. I don't really know of a better system right now. I've been extraordinarily happy for the 25 years that I've been doing this. And it's led to so many other things that have enhanced my life and giving me the opportunity to do other things. So I can only say that those doctors out there that are going to read the book or that are here today joining us for this, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to do it by yourself. There's plenty of help out there, but you have to do something. Complacency doesn't move the needle.
Love it. Complacency does not move the needle. I'm telling you, reimagining medicine, there is a future out there for taking back control and doing it your way, right? Now, our next doc really dives into one of the ways that we talked about moving the needle. He told us in his chapter about some of the darkest days that he's had and how he's been able to return from the depths of that dark days, and has been giving us some practical ways to be able to be, as physicians, some practical ways to move forward. I'm going to have the one and only Dr. Anthony Avellino tell us about his chapter in this wonderful book. Thank you, Dr. Tony.
All righty, great. Well, I am actually very, very pleased to be here. And I met Kim probably about 3 years ago or so. And she's truly a remarkable person. where she really developed this book around creating communities where physicians can recharge, reflect, um, because I'm a pediatric neurosurgeon as well as an experienced healthcare administrator. Um, and in 15 plus years or so, I was in a very bad place. Um, but from those experiences, I really learned because I often say that you have to listen, you have to learn, and you have to heal. My story is not unique, but I often say that in order to be a good physician, to really take care of others, I often say that performance equals skill minus interference. And what I mean by that is if you're an elite scholar, elite physician, elite musician, you can have all the skill in the world, but if you can't block out your interferences, whatever they are, if you're not mentally prepared, if you're not mentally well, if you're not happy and satisfied, if you're not doing purposeful work, if you're not in healthy relationships, if you're not showing compassion towards yourself, it's really difficult to take care of others. And I often say that I wish I knew 30 years ago because I would be a lot more at peace. And I think the powerful thing about this book is it's creating a community, it's creating stories to really help physicians and providers heal. Because being a physician is not easy, as others have said, is medicine has changed. When I went to medical school in the late 1980s, it was very, very different. But within my chapter is I would like to really leave people with is there's a few practices that one can cultivate where you can have greater peace, joy, and meaning. And over the years is my wife and I came up with a few things. And so first is take time for yourself and lead a peaceful life. Second, eat healthy, exercise regularly, and sleep. I would argue that sleep is one of the most powerful things that you can do. Three is commit to lifelong learning and remain open to having someone help you. Treasure family and friends. Respond positively to disappointment. Choose your outlook each day with intention, because I often say is you choose the type of day you have. And then last, smile, laugh, and celebrate the small moments. And so I encourage people to read this book because it's full of thoughtful stories that can truly change your life.
Thank you so much, Dr. Avellino. Yes. So when we think about this, like we said, there are some ways that you can do on a daily basis to try to bring this way of reimagining medicine to life. One thing that you talked about is self-compassion, right? And our next author really dove into how important self-compassion is, especially for us physicians, because a lot of time, the last person we give compassion to is ourselves. Now, Dr. Joseph Sherman, you state in the book that when we cultivate self-compassion, we as physicians, as you're saying, we don't weaken our professional identity. We actually deepen it. And that's a statement that you made that really struck me in this book. So tell us a little bit about your chapter and then why that statement was even placed in it. You probably didn't even just put it in there just for me, but it really hit me. So tell me a little bit about your chapter and then why you came up with that statement.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to echo everyone's sentiment and just express my gratitude for being included in this amazing group of healers and human beings. Um, this, I mean, it's heartwarming to see a group of physicians of all specialties, all generations, all backgrounds coming together and speak and share our challenges, our joys, and our needs as human beings. And as the last two speakers spoke, when I was coming out of medical school and training in the 1980s, this type of forum and this type of book was unheard of. You did not talk about your needs. And in my chapter, Coming Home to Ourselves, Physician's Guide to Self-Compassion, Sustainable Care, I talk about physician identity and what it means to be a doctor. And I tell the story about coming together for my 40th medical school reunion and seeing all of these friends that I never knew as doctors. They were friends. They were people that supported me, that we had fun together. We played sports together. We put on shows. I listened to their talents, their creativity. I never have known them as physicians. And here we are 40 years as doctors. And this brings us together like we are human beings at our core and in our essence. And all the things that we were taught, that I was taught, and unfortunately continue to be perpetuated in medical training. This idea of self-sacrifice, put others first, put yourself last. This added on to my upbringing, my faith, my tradition, my culture. Self-sacrifice was driven into me. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. What is this idea of balance and self-care? This is what the wimps need, not you. And the idea that if I can help other people, and the more I work and the more I do, the more they'll thank me, the more they'll love me, and the better I'll feel about myself. And this hit that you keep going for, that dopamine hit, after a while, you just work, and you're exhausted. But we're all human beings. We need to take care of ourselves. And this makes us more present to our patients, more present to our families, and more present to our colleagues who we're working with. And the practice of self-compassion is something I had heard about mindfulness before, and I knew about mindfulness. I practiced mindfulness and meditation. But I remember one day I was driving my car down the highway and I heard this person, Kristen Neff, a psychologist, talk about this practice of mindful self-compassion. And I thought, what is this? This is kind of woo-woo stuff, It's like, put your hand on your heart, do this. But then she was a researcher and she says, this releases oxytocin. It's been proven by these research studies. Stimulates the vagus nerve, activates the parasympathetic. She was talking my language. And I thought, well, I better pay attention to this. So now in my coaching practice, as well as my facilitation practice of medical teams, I always talk about the difference between the compassion we show toward our patients and our loved ones and what we give for ourselves. And that we don't have to go out seeking other people to validate us. We can actually practice self-compassion for ourselves. And this makes us, and it's been proven through research studies, it makes us more present to our patients, it makes us more present to ourselves, and it actually makes us better doctors and better colleagues to work with. So it will improve our professional and personal state of mind. And I know for a fact, I have worked for years as a pediatrician with underserved populations in several countries. And now as I meet a patient or a family and I feel their suffering come into me, I have a practice where I can place my hand on my heart. It looks like I'm fixing my stethoscope. And I am saying quietly to myself, it's okay, Joe. It's all right. You'll get through this. You can do this. It's all right. Take a breath. And I'm there and I'm present and I'm listening instead of going, when am I getting out of the office? How do I get out of here? When am I getting home? So it's an active practice that we can do to take care of ourselves and not have to go look outside for that same validation and love and appreciation and self-worth.
I love it. You know, one of the part that I loved was when the way you described it about, hey, looks like I'm moving my stethoscope. I said, huh, that is slick. I love that. Because if we think about it, a lot of times our stethoscopes are hanging over our necks, and we can definitely gently move that and tap into our hearts. Now, the next author on this section is yours truly, Dr. Tamara Beckford, where I talk. My chapter is titled The Morning That Saved Me, How One Small Decision Transformed My Life. And my chapter is about this thing that happened in 2020 that you guys might have heard about, which was the pandemic. So, for you all who don't know me, I'm an emergency medicine physician, and the pandemic is a time that we know that that's where all of those who are on the front lines, you had to be there. You had to be there no matter what. But I described that what saved me was a practice which we all have been talking about in some way, which is it incorporates a self-compassion that Dr. Joe talked about, the awareness and mindfulness that Dr. Tony and talked about, which is recognizing all of these and working on it initially before it became the thing to do, right? So during that time, I actually started, let me try to get myself out here so you guys can see me. So I actually started to work on I actually started working on what we call self compassion and personal development. It's now the big thing, right? Personal development. But at that time, no one really, you heard like, yeah, a little bit of Tony Robbins, but I went before the Tony Robbins. I was listening to the Zig Ziglars of the time, right? So the people who influenced all the ones who were there. And it was just very interesting to me. Like, wow, let me see what's going on. But little did I know I was preparing myself for this thing called the pandemic. So when it hits, I had the opportunity to have worked on myself. And one of the powerful ways I did it was preparing myself for the day. So I worked on what's called the morning routine. And that's what I talk about in the book, which is the first 30 minutes of this day. So the morning routine, which is your first 30 minutes of the day, we know is the most powerful part of your day. This allows you to step into the world and create the day that you want, right? But a lot of us, we go into the world and have the world create the day that the world wants on us, which is once you step in, as soon as you wake up, you start bombarding yourself with a lot of external input. But what is it that you're putting in? Are you inputting positivity, or are you inputting just whatever the world wants? Are you inputting the fear and anxiety of the world into your mind? Are you inputting enrichment? What is it that you're doing the first 30 minutes? And also importantly, for me, before that, I would just snooze my way. The snooze button and I were friends. And I did not let the first 5 minutes of the day be a day that I empowered myself. The first 5 minutes of the day was a swipe, which is 5 more minutes, swipe, snooze, 5 more minutes. And then when I did wake up, I listened or went on social media, listened to the pandemic. Oh, we had so much more people dying. All of that just, would have created anxiety. But because I worked on those first 30 minutes, my mornings were a source of strength, were a source of empowerment to get through the day. So when I stepped into the ER and chaos ensued, I stepped in with calmness, and which is what was needed, right? You needed that level-headed person, the person that can be there to help your anxious colleague, to help your anxious patient, to help the patients. I at one time had to intubate a husband and wife, and the husband extubated himself, which means that he pulled the tube out. And so I had to rush back and do that. Now, when you're in a situation like that, you want to be level headed. You want to be able to call and talk to the family and to let them know that the person that's taking care of their family member they care, and they're compassionate. But even more importantly, I had to realize that, as even Dr. Joe said, that I had to have compassion towards myself. And the morning routine was that, the way to stand and to say to myself, you're going to do well today. You're doing it. It's okay if you have a bad day. Next moment, you can take a few breaths in, and the next moment does not have to be like the moment that you're having right now, right? But all of that started with me making decisions on the day that I was having. The decision was, I'm going to have a great day. And how am I doing this? By implementing these simple steps. One, I'm putting my phone across the room. So as soon as the alarm goes off, I'm going to encourage myself, AKA force myself, to get up out of bed and to walk across that room. So now I've already incorporated movement. Once I get up, the likelihood of me going back to snooze has dropped tremendously. Two, I'm incorporating positive input immediately. The first 30 minutes is not about me looking at social media and wishing that I was wherever that other person is. It's not me getting this input of how negative and all these negativity that's coming in about, the world is ending. Oh my gosh, the economy is at this worst. No, I'm inputting what I know will build me up for the day. And three, when I incorporate movement and I step out into the world, I am responding. I am not reacting. So these are some of the steps that I was able to use and incorporate during the pandemic, and it's helped me to move forward. However, the morning that changed my life was the morning that I started to implement this before the pandemic started. So they said that when the opportunity exists for you to step on stage, it's too late if you have not prepared. You prepare ahead of time. And this and reading this chapter will help you, along with all the other chapters in this wonderful book. It helps you to prepare as physicians. And I even see someone else also in the chat that's watching this. She says that, I'm not a physician, I'm a lawyer, and just stumbling on this. But I feel like it applies to many professions. So, which is why we wrote something like this. So, yes, you're a lawyer and you're in a high stakes profession. These stories and these techniques apply to you, right? You're in any profession. If you're in any stage of life where you're feeling stressed, you're feeling like I'm ready to give up, you're feeling like externally no one understands, this book of stories shows you that people do understand and that you're not the only one going through it. We've really unraveled a lot of our deepest, darkest moments in this book to let you know, who are out there, that you're not alone. Now, next, I want to bring on one of the editor extraordinaire of this book to just tell us what she thought about this process in working with the physicians. And then before we let all our physicians go, we're going to just tap into and ask them if there's a story that they had to edit out because it was just too long. Like I want to pour everything in here, but I wasn't able to. So just tell us if there's a story that you wanted to tell, but you just weren't able to in this. So go ahead, start off. Go ahead, Emmy, pardon me, Emmy. I'm just going to have you tap in here and tell us all about your editing skills and what made you decide to go ahead with this wonderful project.
Lovely. Well, thank you for having me. And I have to say, it's just incredible to see everyone's faces tonight. Well, I'm in Greece, so it's evening here. But I've read all of these chapters. I've been reading inside out like 10 times, reading these chapters, and to finally see everybody's faces, hear your voices, and see you as people, it just makes me so happy. That these are the people that I've had the privilege of supporting and really reading your stories. It gave me a sense of these people are amazing. They have this sense of purpose. They have this sense of it's like you're on a mission. You have this voice that you want to share and make a difference because you've seen that the system is broken and you want to actually be this instrument and use this platform, your writing, your voice to actually make change. And for me to be able to support everyone in this process, to actually help you to bring out your voice, to bring out your stories, to actually encourage you to share your vulnerabilities. I mean, we entitled this book, White Coats, Courageous Hearts, because the people who wrote these stories are so courageous, sharing your stories, sharing your vulnerabilities, and also showing that you have this humanity in you. You also have this power in you, just as you were talking about today, that you do have the power to change the broken system. And for me, it's really deeply inspiring. I feel really honored and grateful to be part of this incredible project and to be working with everyone. And tonight is a celebration. And as far as the stories, I don't remember taking out particular stories. I actually encouraged the authors to share more. It's
Absolutely.
like, tell me more, like I want to hear more. How did you feel when this happened? What was the vision in your head when that happened? That was my role as an editor. My background is also in health psychology, so as a psychologist, it's our line to say, how do you feel about that? That's like our line. So I just tapped into that, and I'm just really grateful for
Mhm.
everyone to for being so open and so generous, sharing your stories, because the people who will be reading this book will have the sense of, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one. They will feel seen, that their experiences will be validated. They will be given the opportunity to actually reflect on where they're at, maybe prompt some discussions, maybe in the workplace if they are in a position of leadership, maybe change some policy, or at least have discussion and prompt action as a community, as a collective. That's what I'm hoping. The impact of this book will be to touch other people's lives, in the sense that they feel seen, that their experiences are validated, but at the same time have this sense of community, that you have
Mhm.
the power to make a difference, bring about change, and come together, and as Kim would say, stand up for doctors, and have this change that you're aiming for.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And as we mentioned, I am going to bring it over back to some of our docs who are here. And I know some of them because they are physicians, guys. So, we are not able to have everyone on at the same time. And some of our docs, strange
Looks like
reason.
our host dropped. She's coming
I
back.
know. I removed myself. I'm like, okay, go like me trying to edit and produce at the same time. Oh my goodness. Alrighty, so Dr. Kawam, let me tap the correct spot to have you come on as a solo. Now tell me, was there a question, actually a story that came to mind? Now I know that you mentioned, like, being a pathologist, you're like, well, I don't really get as much bedside, but I'm here, and you're definitely a huge part of the healthcare system, because even a lot of us, when we think of pathology, we really are thinking about like autopsies, but then you mentioned like the blood work and so on. We are waiting for you as an ER doc. I'm always waiting for you. Like but were there any stories that really that you had, but you edited out, that would have also tied into what we're talking about here, which is the courageous heart, and about this portion of the chapter that you are so like aptly part of, which is shared challenges, unique roles? Go ahead and tell us.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's not, wasn't so much my story as much as it was the stories of the people that I worked with. So the laboratory techs, I hope to represent them. Obviously, I'm just a pathologist, but I really want to take a moment to show them, like, to kind of bring their voices out to the open because they really don't have a voice. So hearing the laboratory techs, we had one of our histotechs who we were severely understaffed, like most places are. And I'll, talk a little bit about that in just a second, but a lot of places are severely understaffed. One histotech, her family member, who was her sister, who was in her like mid 50s, got colon cancer and passed away. So, you know, it was a histotech who's cutting tissue all day. So if you're not familiar with what a histotechnologist does, so after somebody gets surgery, for example, they take out a piece of the colon that has a cancer, it gets processed and it gets made into slides, and then me, the pathologist, looks at those slides. So she's cutting tissue every day, right? She sees all these cases, whether it's from an endometrium, whether it's from a breast, whether it's from a colon, whether it's from an esophagus. She gets to cut tissue every day. And it was such, from my perspective, was like I could sense like the emotional like burden that she was suffering. Obviously her sister passed away, but like being around the human tissue that was just her job was also very stressful for her. So, like even how we see patients, unfortunately, like, as when I was in med school and I got like face-to-face patient interaction, and our clinical colleagues every day, they do see patients suffering in action. So, like real time. And this was somebody who kind of had to like endure that, but also have to come back to the job. So, I just want to highlight the pain that other people go through too. Not just like, yes, it's not just like, our physicians are suffering and things like that, but everyone else on the caretaking team that doesn't necessarily have a large title or a big degree also has to deal with certain pains. And some of it is their own, um, like their own family that's going through something, and that they have to come and face a piece of that, puzzle on a daily basis. So, I mean, I would have liked to put that in there because it is very painful. Obviously see your sister pass away and have to come to cutting tissue that, oh my God, what if this is cancer? Like, it's when you get that kind of diagnosis, it's not a joke, right? It's life
It's like
altering.
the reintroduction of the trauma. It's kind of like what Dr. Todd mentioned, right? Where you have, quote unquote, gotten through this portion of trauma, but then you now have to go back and get reintroduced to it in either, sometimes it could be like a week. I know that one of our other docs who is not here, Dr. Dawn Sear, she expresses also in her story about a loss while she, like a pregnancy loss. And there are other docs who have talked about, like our other women docs who have talked about pregnancy loss and then having to go and take care of other pregnant women at the same time. So it's like this, you yourself, and there are many docs who've expressed like, they're actively miscarrying, they're still at work, they're taking care of other women who are pregnant. So they're going through that trauma and that pain and that grief. But right in front of them, you're a physician, as we all say, right? So what do you have to do? You have to put on that smile. Like, you have to go ahead and put yourself last in this list and take care of the patient. And Dr. Sue and even Dr. Todd, Dr. Robert, and Joe, we all mentioned that it's not that we don't believe that the patient should be first, but we should be aligned, the physicians and what we go through. It should be neck and neck who's first. So physicians, if we aren't being healed, like how can we heal? If we aren't being thought about, and if we're, last on the list because everyone else is first, how can we heal? So as you mentioned, even Alae, like our team needs us. Our team is also going through trauma, but everyone who goes through trauma and has to go back through it over and over again, it weakens us as, a team overall. It weakens us. Now, I wanted to also, let me see, there is Dr. Kawam just mentioned this, and then Dr. Shabir, she said that she also had something that she wanted to talk about, patient advocacy, something that um, you are very, very strong and passionate about in addition, but you weren't able to bring that into the chapter. And then we're going to also have Dr. Kornfeld, who says he has a story. He's like, I got a story. I'm going to let you know. So go ahead, Dr. Shabir, and then we'll have Dr. Kornfeld.
Thank you, Dr. Beckford. This has been wonderful. I tried to write a book in a chapter, and power to like Kim and Emmy for actually turning it back into a chapter. So I first want to say that. What I want to make a statement in terms of patient advocacy, and this book is about doctors, and we're talking about what's happening to doctors behind the scenes. Everyone has shared their story so generously, so courageously. But I'm not just a doctor. I'm a patient. I'm a mom. I'm also a caregiver. Like, I have so many other roles. And from the outside, it looks like a mystery. What's happening to my doctors? Where are my doctors? Why are my doctors behaving in this manner? Why do they appear a little irritable? Why are they leaving their practices? So what's happening to my physicians? I think this book is not just about, I know it's not just about physician advocacy. It's not just about healthcare worker advocacy. It is actually about patient advocacy, because when you lose a doctor, an entire community suffers the loss and the repercussions. And when I talk about early career physician well-being, we know that data emerging is showing that physicians in the first 2 years of their new medical practice are leaving. Before, the numbers were around 5 to 6 years. So when you are in a position, in a place, and you're really wondering what's happening to your doctors, and from the general public's point of view, it's still quite mystical. And I've had these conversations where people really don't know what's happening in the day-to-day of physicians. A lot of times we look at doctors in a very different light. We don't look at them in the human light. We sort of dehumanize them. We don't think of them having pregnancies or children or miscarrying, like some of the statements that were just made, or that they have other roles. And so when we, the physicians, pretend to be part of a system that is flawed, but we pretend to be perfect, and part of a system that's very imperfect, it's really hard for the person from the outside to know what's happening here. So I invite everyone, not just physicians, not just clinicians, all healthcare workers and people outside of healthcare, actually, to come and please get this book, read the stories, so you get an inside idea of what's happening to your doctors and where are they going and what's going on with them, so you can advocate for your own health.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're right. Overall, when we see what's going on, then it's easier for us as a community, and the community exists with the different layers of the healthcare team and the patients overall, because this whole thing started because a patient decided to advocate for their doctor, right, Kim? Right? When we were, I remember, like, Kim reaching out, and even my husband says that. He's like, she's just like a genuine person who really loves doctors. He's like, she doesn't have any ulterior motives. She's just really a kind person who loves and advocates for doctors. And you see the power that it brings. You've seen the smile. A lot of us, aka all of us here, would not have been here unless you took this role at a time where there was a plummet in us saying that, yeah, we love our doctors. We as doctors had a small uprising in care and love from the community, and then it plummeted immediately, right? But you definitely saw that. So let's just have you just give us a quick statement on that, and then we'll have our story from Dr. Kornfeld. Like, where did that joy come from of advocating for us?
Well, thank you so much, Tamara. And what happened is I found the Kevin MD site, in like around March of 2022, when I started reading all the articles and, reading the statistics about physician suicide and just knowing how they were struggling. And at that point, having had cancer, well, I hadn't even quite found out about the third cancer, but I was just worried about my own doctors. So, and I had just connected with Dr. Michael Hirsch, who connected me on LinkedIn. So I started reaching out to the doctors from the Kevin MD articles, which included Sue McClellan-Tolbert and Tony Avellino, and then LinkedIn doctors. And we were having conversations, and I was hoping they could help me find ways to help my own doctors. And that didn't really go very far in regards to, I couldn't find a way to become active in my local healthcare system. But they were also telling me that they thought I was meant to make a bigger impact, and you can make a bigger impact if you're not in the healthcare system. But I really didn't want to hear that. I'm like, I don't care about that. I just want to have my own doctors. But then I started listening to their stories and just finding ways to support them. And then through my YouTube channel, when when the doctors share their stories, it helps other doctors and it helps them heal. So it's just so beautiful, and to see you all together, because of course I know you all and you didn't all know each other, and some of you we've collaborated on articles together. Actually, probably just about all of us at this point, I would say. And I'm just fighting back tears because it's just so beautiful, and I can't thank you enough, and I'm honored that each of you contributed. So just thank you from my whole entire heart.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being an advocate and stepping in there. And you're right. I remember I was one of those people that says, I think you need to go broader.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that the area alone was not ready for you. And it's so funny how we see in others what they don't see in themselves, right? Now, Dr. Kornfeld, you said, hey, I got a story for you. Go ahead and tell us.
Well, had I had more space in the chapter, I would have written about this. And this is something that I've come across many times because I do have a teaching institute. Anytime you're contemplating change, you're actually walking toward the unknown. And the first thing that brings up is fear. So I want to talk a little bit about the science of neuroplasticity, because this absolutely changed my life. When I had come out of burnout and I started to do different things, like I was exercising, I was eating a really good organic vegan diet, I was meditating, I was doing yoga, I was doing a lot of really good things for myself. But unfortunately, I had a hard scrabble childhood, raised by two parents who were narcissistic, that were very vocal about not being happy about being parents. They weren't emotional, they weren't effusive. I never really felt loved. I had a very low self-image, very low self-esteem, never felt I was worthy of love. And as I was going through the shifts and changes, and I started going to a lot of motivational speaking engagements and doing transformational workshops and things like that, I really became aware of my negative thinking. And I started to work on myself in a way that neuroscience explains. Because by the time we're 7 years old, our subconscious is pretty much almost totally programmed. So whatever we take from that early time of our life, if we drag it into adulthood, we have to realize we were surrounded by giants who were always telling us what to do. We weren't allowed to make decisions. We would get yelled at if we didn't cooperate. I mean, we're programmed to think that we don't have the answers. We're programmed to think we're not okay all by ourselves. So in addition to all the things I was doing, I decided I'm going to reprogram my subconscious, because if I don't, that little child within me, that little Bobby that I grew up, in my early years, is going to run my adult life. So I began telling myself all the things I wish I had been told growing up. I filled my day with positive affirmations. I stood in front of the mirror and I recited them to myself. I'd smile at myself. I would always replace a negative thought with a positive one. And it built a new subconscious attitude that I had. I started to feel worthy. I started to feel like I could accomplish anything. That reprogramming definitely took a few years, no question, but I was really consistent with it. And at the time that I decided I'm leaving this crazy system, I'm going to go into a direct care practice and start to develop deeper doctor-patient bonds, spend more time with my patients, really figure it out, because I had a chronic pain practice. These people were really agitated and unhappy. And I walked into it with a very positive attitude. I'm not going to say I didn't have fear. I think everybody that goes to change anything is going to have fear. The question is if the fear is going to stop you or if you're going to push past it. And the way to push past it is to reprogram what you believe about yourself. Because if you fear failure, you're going to stay stuck in a system that you're not happy with. So what's your choice? You stay stuck and unhappy, or you confront your fears and push past them. And I would have spoken a lot about it in my chapter, because I think so many doctors that call and inquire about my course tell me the same thing over and over again. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'd be successful. I'm afraid I'll fail. My patients will never pay me. They hit me with negative after negative after negative. And I'll say to them, okay, I get that you're afraid of failing, but what would it be like if you succeed?
Absolutely.
And if you want to succeed, you can't let your fear stop you. You can't convince yourself before you start something that it's not going to work out. You have to convince yourself that you're going to succeed. And with that positive mental attitude, with that constant reassurance that you can accomplish anything that you want with motivation and consistency, you're going to get there. I didn't get there alone. I had people helping me. I had to go for help. I had to do the things I had to do because I didn't have the resources within me. If I did, I wouldn't have been so insecure to start with, right? But I think we all have the capacity to reprogram our subconscious and eliminate the childhood thought that we're not in control, that we have to cooperate. Otherwise, we're going to get ostracized. Otherwise, people are going to say terrible things about us. Otherwise, we could fail. All of that has to disappear, because you realize now, and I'm 70 years old, life's getting shorter for me, but I look back at the life that I left behind when I was much younger, and had I done nothing to change my mental attitude, I would have spent my entire life miserable, working in a system where I had to constantly deal with exploitation, abuse, consistently lowering the reimbursements on me, accepting a prior approval and then rejecting the claim that was submitted. None of this makes sense. And yes, it's the patients that suffer as well. We all suffer. The system is making us all suffer. But let's pull it all together. Let's take responsibility for ourselves. Let's make the changes within us that we have to make. That's how we change everything on the outside. And that's why I'm so happy to be in this group of forward-thinking doctors who've done this for themselves, who've taken the opportunity and seized the moment to be real, authentic, and communicative, because this is how we create community of change. This is how we support each other. And again, I want to thank Kim for putting this all together, for Emmy for her amazing editing, Tamara for this beautiful launch. This is just a joy for me, because I've been involved in this for so many years, wishing that the rest of medicine would jump in with me, and it's finally happened. And I'm ever so grateful.
We're here. We are here. Yes. Thank you for fighting that fight, though, Dr. Kornfeld, because if you had not been fighting that fight, then the mindset would not have been out here, right? So, sometimes it takes one person to be a visionary, to say yes. When everyone says that you're crazy, this will never work, you said, why not? Well, let me just go ahead and just see the results. And because of your determination to do something when it wasn't popular, we're here at this point. So, right. Dr. Sherman, you said that, hey, I got a little something I want to add. So go ahead, tell us. And then after that, we'll end off with Dr. Auden before we end this wonderful launch. Go ahead.
Sure. This is wonderful to be able to hear all the stories and everything. And thank you so much, Kim. You're a rare breed. There aren't too many, doctor advocates out there. I often say, when I talk to my families, my friends that are going for medical care, and they're saying, I can't get an appointment, my doctor's all grouchy, they're not playing. And I said, ask them how they're doing. Just flip the tables a little bit and say, I hear it's kind of tough for you. Yeah, what's it like these days? And you'll get much better service, much better care. Kind of backhanded, but it'll work. I just want to put in a plug for asking for help. None of this that we have been talking about is easy. I think all of us have been through some really challenging times in our lives. I remember the moment where I was not burned out, beyond that, anxious, depressed, suicidal ideation. And the psychiatrist asked me to bring my wife into the office. And in tears, she told him she felt she was going to lose me. And he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I have to quit my job. I have to figure this out." And we are so afraid of asking for help as physicians. We've been trained not to ask for help. And so we go beyond kind of misplacement to burnout, to anxiety, to depression. And we do not ask for help because we've been programmed to believe that that's a sign of weakness. I am saying, please, we all need help. We all need other people to help us out, whether it's a therapist, a friend, a coach, a spiritual director. I mean, it's somebody who understands that you are suffering and you're not alone. Please ask for help. I know that there's fear that if you fill out these application questions on state licenses, applications, or hospital privileges, or all these things, but we are campaigning. The Lorna Breen Foundation's been doing amazing work at trying to modernize and humanitize these application questions. So ask for help before it's too late.
Absolutely. And that's an important statement and also realization that you brought in, where a lot of physicians are hesitant to ask for help because we fear the backlash on our careers. But if we're not there, the backlash on our families, those who are closest to us, is even deeper, right? So do not hesitate to ask for help, because all of us need help in one way or the other. Alrighty, so Dr. Todd Auden, so tell us, what's the story that you have or the nuggets?
Well, the story wasn't included because it just happened recently. I often joke that we're building the airplane while we're flying it. And that so too is the case with the current project with the documentary. But I want to tell just a brief story about something that happened last week. Through this journey of mine, from drawing a line in the sand, in part related to prior trauma, networking and meeting people like Kim and everyone else in this room, etc., doors have been opened. Doors that I never thought would have been opened in my entire life. And so last Wednesday, I'm in Martha's Vineyard, sitting on the back porch of Dr. Don Berwick's house. He's a hero to me. He's been advocating very publicly for 3 decades plus. It was surreal. I joke I was in nerd heaven that day. But anyways, I asked him if he had one word, rather, if he could give me the title for the documentary, what would it be? And you know what he said? Solidarity.
Ooh.
I was speechless. And I feel like that's what we're working towards now, learning how to work together to fix the mess that currently exists.
Absolutely. Wow. So powerful. Solidarity. And I think that echoes everything that we have talked about from the beginning from the beginning to the middle to the end. This all started with the solidarity of Kim Downey, a patient who became a physician advocate, who decided to have a bigger vision of how she's like, well, how can I play a role other than being a healthcare worker? How can I play a role in the system? And I don't know if you even thought about the changes that you were implementing at the time by just being you, by being a person who is just kind-hearted, who says, well, how can I highlight what others are going through, right? The solidarity of like Dr. Alae Kawam and her team, where she says that we aren't there at the bedside. We might be in the lab, but we feel that everyone is a part of the team. They're dealing with things. So we might be highlighting in this particular part us who wear the white coats, but we also want to keep the solidarity of those who are working with us in this process, who are dealing with the burnout, who are dealing with this. And then, like you said, Dr. Auden, solidarity in that it's been 30 years that we've had a physician, and one of them is also here, right? Dr. Kornfeld, 30 years. Dr. Joe, we had Dr. Avellino here also, who said that there's more to medicine than the taking care of the patient. There's a whole sector in why aren't we looking at helping those who are taking care of the patients? People didn't believe in it at first because doctors are supposed to be stoic. We were supposed to be the ones that were invincible. But even as Dr. Amna Shabir mentioned, we are humans. We go through the same trials and tribulations. It just so happened that we wear a white coat, either physically or for some of you guys, you see us imagining us in a white coat. But within our heart, we bleed. Within our private moments, we cry. When we lose our patients, we cry. And some of us, we lose our own colleagues to this because we've talked about physician suicide. So this book, White Coats, Courageous Hearts. It's Courageous Hearts because we are really, really going against the grain and telling the story of what happens in our minds, in our hearts, and what we wish will happen in healthcare so that we can move healthcare forward where it's care for all, including the physicians. I want to thank all of you who have been watching this wonderful book launch on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. We appreciate your time. We know that's one of the most valuable things that we all have, which is time. And you decided to take some of that and to give it to us. So from all of us, we want to thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to say goodbye.
And thank you. Could we give a shout out to our colleagues who couldn't be here today, but I'm going to do a couple Zoom episodes to hear their voices as well. And that would be Dr. Don Sears, Dr. Nicole Solomos, Dr. Adam Harrison, Dr. Susan Baumgartel, Dr. David Alfrey, Dr. Stephen Llewellys, and my awesome physician coach, Dr. Michael Hirsch. And also in the little corner of our book, it says Stand Up for Doctors, Book 1, because there's many more stories to tell. So this is the first in a series. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you all. We are gonna say good night, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are watching us today. We love you, and as healthcare professionals, we give our hearts to you, and we're thankful that you're giving your hearts back to us. Bye-bye.